Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the March 2023 edition of the St. Louis Java Users Group. I'd like to, for people who don't know, the St. Louis Java Users Group is an informal group. Attendance is free. There is no formal membership list or anything like that. When we meet in person, our normal meeting date is the second Thursday of every month. That's except December when there's no meeting. There's just too many things going on over the holidays for us to be able to organize a meeting in December. When we meet in person, you can join us for food and social at 6 p.m. and the meeting will start at 6:30 p.m. And our in-person meeting location is the Object Computing Incorporated Training Room, and that's at 12,140 Woodcrest Executive Drive, Suite 310 in St. Louis, Missouri. I'd like to introduce the other members of the St. Louis Java Users Group Steering Committee. So from left to right, we have Ted Doyle, Todd Zimmerman, Bruce Alspaw, that's me in the middle, Wei-Chi Gao, and Kathy Zwang. You can reach all of us on the steering committee if you send an email to this address there at the bottom of your screen. That's javasigsc@ociweb.com. And I'd also like to introduce you to our newest steering committee member. It's Robert Levitt. So he's been to, many of our meetings. And sometimes he's usually the first one there when I walk in. He's been here for a long time. So welcome aboard to the steering committee here, Robert.
Okay.
The St. Louis Java Users Group would not be possible without the help of our sponsors. So I've got the logos up for some of our sponsors here, and I'll just work through left to right, top to bottom. Top left, we've got Object Computing Incorporated. They are the original sponsor from 1997 when this group was first formed. Wow, they've been filling in just whenever we need them. They've been fantastic. JFrog has also been great. They sponsor the fees for the Zoom subscription so that we can have these remote meetings via Zoom, and they're free for you. They also sponsor the subscription fees for the Meetup group, which you signed up on. It's free for you to sign up and go to a meeting and RSVP and all that. But it does cost our organization some money to be able to have a page on the meetup.com website. And JFrog has been very kind in covering that cost for us. And on occasion, they will throw in a few raffle items too. As well, we have Signature Consultants and Adaptive Solutions Group. They are headhunters. So if you are looking for a Java position, or if you have a Java position that you would like to fill, just do a quick Google search for either Signature Consultants or Adaptive Solutions Group and let them know that you heard about us through the St. Louis Java Users Group. And when we meet in person, they sponsor the pizza, but darn it, we just haven't figured out a way to send pizza over Zoom. Now, if you figure that one out, please contact me at that javasigsc@ociweb.com email address for your solution as to how to send pizza over Zoom, because I'd love to have a solution. JetBrains is also a great sponsor, so we will be raffling tonight 2 JetBrains licenses, courtesy of JetBrains, and it's for any of the JetBrains desktop products of your choice. Now, here's the ground rules, though. You must be present to win, and we will do that at the end of the presentation. So if you're watching the recording, I'm sorry, you're too late. You must be present to win at the end of the meeting for the raffle for the JetBrains licenses. Elastic is also a sponsor. They sponsor some gift cards for us for Elasticsearch. Intertech is a training company, and they sponsor the famous Screaming Flying Monkeys, the coffee cups and mouse pads, and so forth. And when we get back to in-person, we'll start raffling those again. Tonight, we will also be raffling off 2 Manning ebooks of your choice at the end of this presentation. And once again, you must be present to win in the raffle for the Manning ebooks. Pearson will also sponsor physical books as well. So thank you to all of our JUG sponsors. Announcements. Okay, so this is important tonight. The Gateway Software Symposium, that's otherwise known as No Fluff, Just Stuff. That's coming up here at the St. Louis Marriott West. That's March 31 through April 1st, 2023. And there's where to get all the details. It's just nofluffjuststuff.com/St. Louis. Now, it's not too late. We have a special JUG discount code if you'd like to attend that conference. It's good for $100 off. And there's your magic code right there on your screen, NFJSJUG100. But here's what's important about this. Tonight, you've been getting those emails about No Fluff, Just Stuff. And that's what enables us to tonight, if you're here in person and can attend the conference, to get a free, that's right, free ticket to attend nofluffjuststuff.com in St. Louis, Missouri. But again, must be present to win. Sorry if you're watching the recording, you're too late. DevNexus 2023 is also coming up, and that's April 4th through the 6th in Atlanta, Georgia. And I will be attending that conference as well. Hopefully, maybe I'll steal some great speakers and you'll get to see them at the St. Louis JUG, but it's also a great conference to attend. It's one of the largest conferences for Java developers in North America. And again, that's April 4th through the 6th, and it's not too late to sign up with it. I highly recommend that conference. It's very well done. As far as upcoming presentations go, on April 13th, we've scheduled Discovery and Test-Driven Database Development. Now, by Daniel Hianosa. Now, Daniel has presented at the JUG before, and he's given some excellent presentations. This one is going to be about how to put your database in a test container, a test like Docker container, spin it up, and it'll facilitate testing of your database-driven application, because database stuff can be really hard to test. And he's going to walk us through a solution that he has found using test containers to test database type applications, if you've got some of those, and a lot of people do. So as far as upcoming presentations go, if you want to keep up with the presentation schedule, you go to the meetup group. That's meetup.com/gatewayjug, and you'll see the updates to our presentation schedule and location. So if we do switch to in-person or something like that, you will see that on the meetup.com site. In fact, I think you can even RSVP for next month's presentation now if you'd like to. That's fine. Now, if you're interested in giving a presentation, or if you would like to be a JUG sponsor, email the steering committee. And again, it's at that same email address that I gave you before. That's javasigsc@ociweb.com. So enough of me going on and spouting off. I think we're just about ready here for tonight's presentation. It's on OpenRewrite, where the code fixes itself plus all the dependencies. And boy, when I read that title, it makes me wonder, are we developers still going to be in a job if the code's just going to fix itself and all the dependencies too? Well, we're going to find out whether Sam's going to put us out of a job here shortly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn things over here to Sam. And so I'm going to stop sharing my screen, which will enable Sam to come in and share his screen. Why don't you take it over here for us, Sam? Take it away.
Hello, everyone. So nice to meet all of you. I am Sam, VP of Engineering at Modern Inc., a software startup focused on the automating the remediation of software vulnerabilities, best practices, and the other mechanical and tedious tasks that we all have to engage with in our day-to-day professions as software engineers. So the we're going to kind of talk about the impetus for creating and running this sort of mass software refactoring technology. I'm going to talk about OpenRewrite, the free and open source library that is my principal responsibility at the company to maintain and to advance. And we will then talk about augmenting that with AI-based capabilities with demos along the way. So this is a kind of a reality that I'm sure all of you grapple with, that there is more and more software in the world than ever, and that the scale of it is not just increasing but accelerating. At some point in the past, in the 90s, when this user group was founded, it was maybe common that a company shipping out software, the software they shipped out, maybe 90% of it was authored in-house and 10% of it was libraries or other dependencies that came from some external supplier. These days, those proportions have been inverted, and any moderately complex software project has a long dependency graph full of open source dependencies, each of which have their own update schedules and their own cadence in which security vulnerabilities are discovered. And there are many engineers, often very senior or very principal ones, who find themselves mired in revving dependency versions and revving tool chains all day long. You know, vulnerability is discovered in some library you transitively include, and now you have to, in order to update to the version that has the fix, you got to go replace the deprecated methods with their replacements, and you can't even foist it off onto the intern or the low guy on the totem pole because it requires some domain knowledge whenever you run into a problem. So even the most experienced and the most skilled software engineers find themselves doing these very tedious, very mechanical, repetitive tasks just to avoid backsliding in terms of the quality and the security and the safety of their software. Yeah, it's exactly what I'm talking about. And you know, and all of this stuff, you know, the number of repositories that is involved in any given, you know, piece of software is increasing. The size, the dependency graph is increasing, and the number of vulnerabilities and the rate at which vulnerabilities are discovered is increasing. And so it's perhaps frankly a little bit ridiculous that we as professional automators of processes find ourselves dealing with these kinds of repetitive tasks by hand quite as often as we do. And so confronting, you know, this rise, this exponential curve in the toil involved in maintaining and advancing a software project is kind of where our technology comes in, and where the impetus for Modern and for our open source technology, OpenRewrite, comes from. So OpenRewrite is a library and a set of tools for manipulating source code to produce source code to source code transformations. The gist of it is that for, say, take Java, for example, we will take the actual Java compiler. We will go collect all of the dependencies for your code, you know, the class path by which it would be compiled from Maven or Gradle or your build tool, pass in those dependencies, pass those source codes, pass those sources into the Java compiler and say to it, you know, hey, go Lex and tokenize this, go parse this, go type attribute it, and then stop. Don't go generate bytecode as you normally would. Just give us those abstract syntax trees that you use to, you know, go do the bytecode generation. And then we take that and we map those abstract syntax trees onto our representation, which we call our lossless semantic tree, as it includes not only the hierarchical structure of the code, but also all of the white space and all of the formatting, which, you know, a compiler doesn't care about. But we do because we want to generate diffs and pull requests and commits, not bytecode. And no human author or no human maintainer of a repository is going to accept your PR if you change all the formatting and strip out all the comments. And we enlighten that with all of the type information about all of the symbols that are used, because the Java compiler has to know that to compile it, and a refactoring recipe, which is going to transform the code, needs to know those types in order to tell the difference between a log.info call that is, say, invoking a vulnerable version of log4j versus a log.info call going to some, an SLF or a different SLF4j implementation. And so on top of that, very metadata rich, very semantically enlightened representation of the code, we can build many different kinds of transformations and remediations. I probably should advance to this slide a moment sooner. We can build migrations to go between versions of, say, JUnit 4 to 5 or Spring Boot 2 to 3, and we can build, replace, build refactoring recipes that will replace a deprecated method with its updated replacement, and we can apply coding best practices and kind of all of these fun things. And we can do migrations. We can go remediate security vulnerabilities, and we can improve code quality. And this number 3, this one about improving code quality, is one that I think is a somewhat personal issue for a lot of engineers, is we have so many systems that are whining at us with long to-do lists of things to improve about the code. It's got these vulnerabilities. There's these 1,000 compiler warnings you're already ignoring. And, here's a static analyzer or a linter to come along and give you another to-do list of tasks to go and deal with, SonarQube or find bugs or the like. And, between all of that and a long list of demands to actually add business value and work on the product code coming down, the life of a software engineer can be a harried one. We are constantly being pulled in different directions. And so our intent is to help remediate, not just provide you a list of a to-do list and angry red exclamation points of you should go fix this, but more give you green check marks of, here, we fixed this for you, you're welcome, enjoy. And so building on this technology, we have, an increasingly large repertoire of recipes, which affect various, transformations of these kinds for a variety of different technologies, focused on the source code representation, but, any software project also has, build files and properties files and YAML and XML and data of all different kinds that it needs to actually ship software, right? Like you can't update from Spring 2 to 3 without going and updating properties files and YAML files and whatever else as well. And then there's all of the challenges of running in a distributed infrastructure as code environment where you have proliferations of Terraform scripts or the like, which yes, I am walking on a treadmill. Yeah. Santosh said that he's not seeing slides. Well, people are seeing the screen, right? I haven't been presenting a blank screen to everyone. Yeah, okay, cool.
Yes,
so Robert
I'm
sees
able
some
to
slides.
see them, Sam. He may be having some technical difficulties. He
Very
just
good.
got
He's
back
good
into
now.
the room.
Glad to hear it, Santosh. Right. So yeah. And so OpenRewrite is the core open source refactoring technology, which is, you can go and look at the source code on GitHub, and I'll show this to you during the demo portion, what some of this looks like and where you can go to contribute or view the catalog of recipes. And we also have a public instance of our SaaS platform, which allows all of these refactoring and search and dependency vulnerability updating recipes to be run at scale across any number of repositories. And this is free for open source projects. We currently have about 20,000 projects that we've ingested from GitHub that you can run refactoring recipes across. And so any of you could go and experiment with this with only a GitHub account to see how these refactoring recipes operate and to and get a feel for it. And I'll be demoing some of that in just a minute here. Now, everything I've been telling you about so far, all of the recipes that we create that affect these transformations are written by hand by a developer. This is not an AI-based system. This is a rules-based system where I create a recipe that can change a method name from A to B, and then that can be used as a building block in another recipe that needs to migrate from deprecated method foo to new hotness bar, right? And so in this way, recipes can be composed together to make ever larger and more powerful stuff. But writing these recipes, there's a learning curve, right? Most programmers, even very experienced ones, don't spend that much time thinking about an abstract syntax tree or a lossless semantic tree representation of the code they're working on. And so in order to write these refactoring recipes, you have to surmount this learning curve in order to get familiar enough to write these recipes. And like any other piece of software, there's opportunity for bugs or other challenges to creep in. So we've also been experimenting about with how we can create recipes with AI. And so, I will show you one of our recipes implementing a coding best practice in, written the normal way, and then a recipe that does the same thing, powered by the same models that power ChatGPT. And so let's go and take a look at that now. So let's see. I will go over to, well, I'll just run the recipe to start with in my IDE. So this is, I'm going to be running a recipe just from our open source repository, which I'll go ahead and show you guys. That's just, here on GitHub under OpenRewrite rewrite is where we develop the core technology. You kind of see all the languages we support. And a bunch of the refactoring recipes themselves are in there as well. And so this guy, which we call default comes last, implements a coding best practice where, if you have a switch statement with multiple cases and have a default case, by convention, you put the default case at the end. And so if you wanted to enforce that convention across your entire code base, you want to have a standard, you want your code to throughout the organization to look and function the same, you can either go be like a stern disciplinarian who goes and tracks down everyone who does this, and like a parent yelling at their kids to clean their room. You can be like, put your default case at the end, or you can go and run a recipe. So let's go take a look at the implementation of this, where we have a visitor pattern that makes it easy to visit, in this case, switch statements, and then have some imperative logic within here, which iterates through the switch statement, looking at what order the case statements come in. And if it finds the default statement is not last, then it goes and through some handcrafted logic goes and puts it last. And if we go look at the default comes last tests, we have some examples of what I'm talking about. Default case in the middle after running the recipe, default case should be at the end. And we can just run these in the IDE to see that is what happens. So I'll just let that build and run. Yeah, and so we see that these test cases all pass, and this default comes last implementation is just under 200 lines of code, so it's not a huge program, but I'm sure that all of you looking at this cannot immediately grok it and would understand that there's a learning curve to be involved in authoring this. So we want to create more of these refactoring recipes more quickly. So we've been experimenting with using AI to do the same thing. And I gotta say, I don't want to be put out of a job by an AI model either. So I was maybe a little bit invested in this rules-based, handcrafted approach to authoring refactoring recipes, and maybe saw it as having a somewhat adversarial relationship with AI-based techniques for doing the same. And after we started doing this experiment, I started to change my opinion and started to see these as being more complementary to each other. The generative or the model-based techniques as being able to enhance and be enhanced by the more structured and more rules-based technique. So here is a recipe that does the exact same thing, or tries to do the exact same thing as the handcrafted recipe I showed you just a moment ago. And this guy is a little bit simpler. I think you can read through this and understand it at a glance much more easily. We're still visiting switch statements, and then we're iterating over the cases within that switch statement. And if we find that there is a default switch in there, then we go and ask this AI model powered generative code editor with just a plain English query to rewrite it so that the default case comes last. And we can go and look at the test and see, that it should have the same effect as before. And if we run it, we'll see something interesting or see something perhaps characteristic of these AI or these model-based approaches to doing transformations. Have this running in a loop, so we run the same test 10 times. And, aside from the part where we invoke the AI model, all of the code is very deterministic. But the AI model doesn't always, in this run, 7 out of 10 times it did what we wanted, but 3 out of the remaining 10 times it did something different. So we can go and look at these and look at the diff and just see what the model did wrong, and then adjust or tune our query in order to try to persuade it to get the result that we want. So here we see it did move the default case to be last, but it also reordered case 0 and case 1. So we can go to the implementation and tune our query. And here I have GitHub Copilot trying to suggest text I should tune this query to. So we have AI informing AI, but instead I'm going to say not reorder the other, not reorder the other case statements, and see if this affects the output we get, if this is going to increase our success rate. So this time we got 9 out of 10 times it worked. And if we look at the result, the failure was because I hit a rate limit on on calling into the OpenAI model, which is something that in this experiment we're just calling out to an external service that hosts these AI models. As we go further to build this kind of functionality into OpenRewrite, we will do so with models that we can bundle with it so that we don't have these sort of external service dependencies. But if you want to go try this out yourself, this project is also open source. And if I go open this on GitHub, you can see it's here in this Rewrite Generative AI project. And all you need to do to make this work is put an API key in an appropriate place. So you would need your own OpenAI key. But I guess while we're on the subject, I will go ahead and put a couple links in chat if anyone wants to start perusing. So there's the main repository. And here is the generative AI repository if anyone wants to play around with and compare these recipes. And so kind of having had this experience of doing this experiment, of having written many many handcrafted rules-based deterministic recipes, and then comparing that to this more easy to query in natural language, but somewhat stochastic in its behavior, model-based things, I now see more how these could be complementary approaches. Because, we have this rules-based approach, even within this AI powered recipe, to narrow down its area of focus to just switch statements so that it does not have the opportunity to go and change any other part of the code in a way we do not want. Uh, and then you can imagine how, in many cases, it's a lot easier to write a rule or to write code that validates that an answer is correct or has the attributes you want than it is to write code that affects that transformation. So you can imagine how we could pair this, how even this recipe could be enhanced with a check after the fact that maybe enforces some of the rules that we, or some of the attributes we want to get out of this transformative query. After this, we could start iterating over the change statements and, check things like, is the default statement last now? Are there the same number of case statements that there were before? Have the order of the other case statements been changed at all? And so we could kind of marry these approaches to code transformation in order to get the ease of authoring of transformations that AI offers us with some of the reliability and predictability that doing a handcrafted, designed approach can offer. Yeah. Any questions about that so far? Well, I'll just keep an eye on chat, and I've talked about a couple different scenarios. Have you experimented with combining property-based testing with the generative techniques? No, but I'm curious to hear more about that. If you want to, describe some of the things you use property-based testing for, and how, I'd be interested to hear more on that subject from you. So I've kind of shown you. I think I will show you now some usage of our SaaS platform to run some of these refactoring recipes at scale across many repositories. And here we have our common static analysis issues recipe, which aggregates together several dozen things that a static analyzer like SonarQube might complain at you about, and implements fixes for them. So let's go ahead and give that a run and see how this goes. And currently I'm running this on about 100 different repositories. And so and immediately we start getting some results back. We can go click on and take a look at and start seeing the kinds of changes that are affected by this. We see, moving the array specifier into the usual place rather than maybe the C style positioning of it. We see, adding curly braces around statements that previously were, the curly braceless single line form, and other similar rules. And if we're ever curious about, why a particular change was made, we can ask and see what which of the refactoring recipes in this long list affected the change, and a description of why that is a thing you might want to do. And of course, different organizations and different coders can disagree or have different preferences about how, what static analysis rules they might want to enforce in their organizations. Maybe you don't like having, curly braces added around single statement conditionals. And if that was the case, it's very easy to go to the recipe and just, remove that rule, that one rule from it, and go run the others, and maybe add in other rules that suit your organization. And, so if we go through this and, liked the changes this was making, here making a local variable final that could be final because it's not updated, and here, using the diamond operator when it's not necessary to redundantly respecify this type, all this fun stuff, we could go and start issuing commits. And if I was a committer on this Netflix graph project, which I'm not, I could commit directly. And if And since I'm not, I could go open, create a fork and open a pull request from that fork. And similarly, even do that in mass across, all of these different ones that I got results for, except for Spring Data Commons. We ran into an error on this one that I'll, go investigate and fix later. Yeah, so, in this way, with a recipe like this, you see how you could kind of get out of the disciplinarian role of being the bad guy who goes around to all the junior engineers, or even maybe just the slightly sloppier engineers, and tells them, hey, pick up your socks, put curly braces around that single, that single statement if statement's body, and just run something like this in a schedule, so that even as new instances of the mistakes it corrects are added to the code base, well, then they just get remediated right away. Yeah, so that's our common static analysis recipe. On the kind of dependency vulnerability and updating front, we have recipes for, this is taking its, let's go back this way. So we have this recipe to help you try to identify and remediate your any vulnerabilities that may be found in your code. And so for this, we connect to the OWASP, US government provided centralized database of software vulnerabilities. And we go and scan your dependencies for any dependencies, whether first order or transitive, that are known to have vulnerabilities, and can both, provide you a report about this, as well as go and start updating version numbers. So let's go ahead and let this run. Let's see. Let's take a look at one of these. Yeah, and so we see that in the case of this, Spring project, Spring session data, MongoDB, we can automatically move it to a newer version number of this Spring Security Core dependency, which is not affected by whatever vulnerability is being was found in the earlier version of Spring Security Core. And obviously, previously this version is managed by a bomb somewhere, and we can configure or change the behavior of the recipe depending upon our preference to override with a managed version with an explicit version number like this, or not. So that many organizations or individuals have different preferences for how to go about this sort of remediation. Yeah, and any of those can be accommodated. So recipes can both affect transformations as well as query your code base, since you have this powerful type attributed representation of the code that also knows about all of the dependencies, first order and transitive. We can produce reports in like CSV or Excel, which you can then start to use to see into and understand your code with all of the data analysis or kind of business intelligence or statistical methods that you might be familiar with using to solve other problems in a scientific and data-driven way. We have a bug right now where our column headings are misaligned. I trust you'll understand. So this column should be here. And so here we see across all of the repositories that we ran this on, what the repository was, what branch it was, and which CVE or CVEs were discovered within that repository, the GAV coordinates of the dependency which is vulnerable, and if a fixed version of that dependency is known to exist, what that version is, along with the OWASP database description of what that issue is and its severity. So you could see kind of immediately how you could, quickly, just like that, go look over all of your code, see all of the critical vulnerabilities, and even start committing version number bumps to resolve those. Let's see, that's our dependency update. And so kind of the third scenario that we've talked about for these recipes is the migration. So, we have recipes to migrate you between different versions of Java. So say you're on Java 8, you want to get to Java 17, we have a recipe for that. And not every part of every software migration can be automatically remediated. Sometimes there are complex situations where a human engineer has to analyze and make a decision. But we figure that even if we can only remediate, 80% of a complex migration, well, if we cut out all of the obvious stuff and leave you only with the things that really do need your attention, well, that's still a huge value add. So I'm gonna take a look at one of these. So yeah, and here we see stuff like changing string.format to the string.formatted, which is available in newer versions of Java. We see updating GitHub workflows to specify that you want to run on the newer JDK now. You see adoption of newer forms of methods. We see, usage of map.of rather than singleton map, and fun stuff like that. And if this project were one that used the Java X extensions, which were moved to Jakarta, we would see those imports being updated as well. So yeah, so that's kind of what we're about and what we're trying to do. And all of the recipes I've shown you are free and open source. And if you want to check those out or check us out, you can, visit our, already sent you our GitHub, and I'll also send you, if you want to get started with either running these recipes on your code base or ramping up on how to author these recipes yourself, you can go check out our documentation on how to run and how to author recipes. And you can join our open source community Slack, where we have an ever-growing number of people who are contributing recipes for the various frameworks that they author or like to use, and ask questions, get ramped up, join the conversation, maybe create a recipe for something that bothers you that you want to fix and remediate once and for all in your code base. And if you have a large, if you're from a big organization that has many repositories that you would like to run these kinds of queries or transformations over all at once, you could check out modern.io, which is our corporate page, and describes the attributes of this system, which I've been demoing for you here. This public.modern.io tenant is for open source code and runs across those 20,000 GitHub repos. And we do offer paid hosted instances of that for you to have your company's private code in and to run recipes on. And we have a sort of security posture that has allowed us to work with very security conscious customers, such as banks and insurance providers and hotel chains and a whole variety of different industries. So look us up, and thank you for coming. I am open to any and all questions, and I hope you enjoyed the presentation. And I'll leave it on this slide in case anyone. I also put these links in the Zoom meeting chat. So yeah, can you show us how to make a custom transformation? Sure. Yeah. So we have a mixture of there's kind of an imperative core, right, where you can write code through this visitor pattern that I've kind of been showing you with like this default comes last guy. I don't have something to write a recipe for off the top of my head, but you have a mixture of stuff like this that implements a complicated transformation or something that you can't express declaratively. And then we have a YAML format Like I can go show you the like we ran this common static analysis. So we can go look at this. We can go look at this upgrade to Java 17 recipe. And that guy lives in, rewrite. Oh, that guy lives in rewrite migrate Java. Let's make sure I have the most up-to-date code there. So this is the definition for that upgrade to Java 17 recipe I showed you before. And this is purely declarative. This guy is described or defined as a list of other recipes. And some of these guys are declarative YAML, just like this. And some of them are Java, imperative visitor classes. So if I go look at this instance of pattern match recipe, let's take a look at that because that's pretty informative. We can look at instance of pattern match test. So Java 17 introduced this ability to, whenever you are doing a type check, to provide an identifier and have that within the scope where that type check is valid, automatically cast to that type so that you can skip this very common, repetition of check the type, cast the type, and do the check and the cast and assigning a name to the casted variable all in one step. And so this recipe affects that transformation. And so you see this guy implements, visits instance of checks, and oops, I actually pressed a key, and then traverses the tree and makes various decisions about how to what to change before returning a modified tree that is then written out to text at the end when the recipe runs. And this guy might be maybe this wasn't a great choice because while the transformation is simple, the implementation is a little bit more complicated. But if you want to learn how to write recipes, we have guides on how to write Java refactoring recipes, including this very basic one, which just takes an empty class, then adds a new method to it. And so I encourage you to look up this guide on our site and to follow along, and that will get you started with writing Java refactoring recipes. Hopefully that helps, Bruce. Let's see. Another question from Jake. Can a company host their own model to power the remediation, or are we currently limited to public or hosted solutions? So you can go run, like anyone can, without any approval from us, go through like our Gradle plugin or through our Maven plugin, run recipes on your code base. As for, and you can do that right now, as for using a version of our hosted application to run on your code, or to run across many repositories simultaneously, we only do hosted offerings for that. So I'm not ruling it out as impossible. Like if you're in a very high security industry that really wants like an air-gapped installation, that's something we could talk about. But kind of the way we set this up is that you would, like, your organization runs a small agent on, you help you to configure CI pipelines that publish LST jars to your internal artifact repository. And then you run a small agent on-prem, and that communicates with your artifact repository and needs egress only permission in order to go talk to an instance of this application that we would host and manage for you, that then runs those recipes. And that's done in such a way that we have no ability to SSH into it. Your code is never stored anywhere except briefly in memory while a transformation is being run. Yeah, we are SOC 2 Type 2 compliant and have been able to convince some very security conscious customers that this approach is quite safe. Let's see. Generative aside from generative AI recipes, how would you say this is different from legacy auto formatters and self-correcting lint tools? I would say it's very much in the same. It's in the same vein as that. I mean, we are not the first tool to think of the idea of using an abstract syntax tree or something very much like it to modify code. Where I would say ours is maybe more powerful than some of these other approaches is in terms of the richness of metadata that is available. Like there's the full type information, right? You're not just operating on text. There's all the type information. You can tell, what class a method is being called on, the types of its parameters, all that fun stuff, which allows you to make perfectly accurate decisions about about the transformations you want to make. And in that same vein, there's useful metadata about, the full class path that was used to compile the build and all of the dependencies that are available, whether those dependencies are first order or transitive. And all of the data files are also parsed. So, all of the YAML files and the JSON files and all of that other stuff in the project is available for you to read and manipulate so that you can affect these kind of holistic transformations, which just making a code change is not enough, right? Like if you want to move from Spring Boot 2 to 3, you got to go edit the POM or the build.gradle as well to bump version numbers or change build plugins. You got to go edit data files. And because we provide this like somewhat unified visitor-based interface for manipulating all of these different kinds of files, you can look at everything all at once to have the full picture to affect even very complex migration or remediation scenarios. Does that help, Patrick? All right. So, any other questions? Well, if that's all, then I hope I can look forward to seeing some of you in our open source community chat where I hang out all the time, and I'm happy to help people learn how to run recipes or author recipes or any of that fun stuff. Are your transformations limited to Java, or can we do other stuff as well? So Java, we have the most mature support for. We also support Groovy mainly so that we could do Gradle updates. And we have been actively working on Kotlin support and Python support right now. So Kotlin support is out there. Right now, the Gradle build plugin will only parse Kotlin JVM sources. So if you were doing Kotlin JS or Kotlin native or Kotlin multi-platform, we don't currently parse those, although we intend to. And this is, I would say rewrite Kotlin it's alpha quality right now. So if you want to parse Kotlin and start writing Kotlin recipes, it is, you're going to be an early adopter. But this is getting more mature. And after Kotlin and Python, we're going to be adding TypeScript within the next few months here. And we're going to try and be adding C# by the end of the year as well. Oh, and we also support COBOL. So if you work at a big bank or a place that has some COBOL, well, we can do that too. That was a fun parser, fun to implement, let me tell you. There's like 1,000 different, Java has like 30 types of AST elements. COBOL has 1,000. It was wild. Anyway. All right. Well, hey.
Okay. So if no one has any other questions or anything, normally at the end of the presentation, we have a round of applause here. So at least I'll clap.
Thank you.
Thank you. So how many miles have you walked during this?
Let's see. During this, let's see. So I have walked 1.5 miles during this over the last hour. So yeah, I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I have as a programmer quite a sedentary lifestyle, and I noticed myself getting fatter as I worked this job. And so I'm not here to sell you treadmills, but I have definitely been healthier since getting this one.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. So I'm going to stop the recording and we will move to the raffle.